Now, one thing you may have been wondering about as we look at our reference image here is how we could perhaps go about creating the circular holes that we'll need adding to our C-shaped piece here, the area here where these bolts or screws pass through. Now, of course, depending on how our asset is going to be seen, it may not always be necessary to add such a detail to the model. But in terms of modeling training, taking a look at least one way in which we could go about this is going to be very beneficial here, as it will allow us to use foundational modeling tools and techniques in Max in order to solve a very specific problem. To do this, let's select our geometry and then hit the Isolate button in order to make working on the selection that little bit easier. Let's use the Zoom Extensor Selected viewport control to frame up on our geometry. And then, coming to the left viewport, let's press the Alt and W keys to maximize. Press 1 to enter vertex subobject mode, and then grab the vertex that we see sitting right in the middle here. As we need to move this, let's hit W to engage the Move tool, and then S to engage our snaps. Holding down the Shift key, we're going to right-click in the viewport so as to make sure that vertex snapping is on, and also that Enable Axis Constraints in Snaps is on. We need to do this because with the vertex still selected, we're going to left-click on the Y-axis of our gizmo here in order to constrain our move, and then snap our vertex so that it forms this nice straight line. Pressing 2 on the keyboard, let's come into Edge Subobject mode. Click and drag a marquee selection to select these edges, and then hit Ctrl+C to create a new set of connecting edges, assuming of course that you have set up your shortcuts as per our introductory chapter. If not, just use the Connect command. We're going to move these verts down ever so slightly. Press 1 to enter vertex subobject mode, and then, again using the Y-axis only, snap this center vertex into place. What we can do now is press 2 to enter edge mode, select the edge in the middle here, hit Alt and R to select the ring, and then one last time press Ctrl+C to connect or create edges, which, as you can see, gives us the vertex that we want smack in the middle here. What we can do now is press the 1 key to go back to vertex mode, drag a marquee selection around that central vertex. Now we are using a marquee selection, by the way, because if I hold down Alt and middle mouse to rotate my view, it means that we are selecting the vertices on both sides of the geometry here, which is exactly what we want in this instance. Let's just right-click to end that viewport move. And then we want to come to the vertex panel on the ribbon, where we can shift-click on the chamfer tool, and then right-click to zero that out. We need to make a hole that is big enough for our purposes here, and so a setting of 0.15 centimeters should do nicely, after which we can click OK. At this moment in time, we have of course created quite a few n-gons here, but that will actually work to our advantage in this instance, as we do need to insert quite a few cuts here in order to create vertices that will allow us to shape our hole. After maximizing the perspective viewport then, let's get rid of the polygon faces sitting at the center of our diamond shapes by selecting them and then hitting the delete key. Now at this point, I think it would be good to give ourselves a guide as to the shape of hole that we want to create. And so what I'm going to do is come back to the left viewport, and then in the Create tab on the command panel, jump into the Shape section and click the Circle option, and then click and drag in the viewport in order to create a circle around the outside of our diamond shape here. Now, contrary to what we might think, we don't actually want to work with a complete circle here, because we will be adding subdivision smoothing to our mesh later on. And so in this instance, let's come into the interpolation rollout and set the steps value down to 1, essentially giving us an octagon, which is perfect. With our snaps enabled, I am going to work on the x-axis and snap our octagon to the top vertex of the diamond, and then on the y-axis, snap to our 3 o'clock vertex, which puts us in a really good place for creating our circular hole. Let's adjust the radius of our circle so it better matches what we want, and so a setting of 0.15 centimeters should do nicely. Coming to our perspective viewport, let's reselect our geometry and jump into Edge Subobject mode. Now we could shift right click in the viewport to enable the midpoint option on our snap controls, and then in the edit panel on the ribbon, click to engage the cut tool and cut between all of our edges. If this works, it is a fast and easy solution. However, sometimes the snap tool might not recognize the midpoints on some of the edges that we are working with, which has happened to me a few times whilst working through this particular section of the model. And so instead then, let's, in the left viewport, select all of the edges making up the screw hole, come to the Edges panel on the ribbon, and click the Insert Vertices button. This will place our verts in the center of the edge and should automatically put us in Vertex Subobject mode with the new verts selected. Holding down the Control key, we can select the corner verts of each n-gon, and because we know that there are no unwanted vertices selected on the side, we can simply come to the Loops panel and click the Connect tool. Back in our left viewport, with snapping enabled, let's shift right click in order to make sure that only vertex snapping is enabled, and again using marquee selections, grab each of the sets of vertices and then snap them to the vertices on our circle shape. Let's jump back to the perspective viewport one last time, come into Border Subobject mode, select the two borders on just this side of the geometry, and then in the border panel on the ribbon, click the Bridge command. Remembering, of course, to do the same on the other side of the geometry. Now, if we were to add an open subdiv modifier at this point, we would find ourselves getting slightly elongated holes due to the fact that we haven't put any vertical edges close enough to the holes in order to keep their shape properly. An oversight that we will go ahead and fix a little later on. For now though, let's focus in our next exercise on applying and setting up the smoothing that is needed for the rest of the pieces that we have here.